Our reading today is Mark chapter 10, verses 35 to 45, about the bold request of James and John. Each of the gospel accounts provides a unique window into the story of Jesus. The emphasis in the Gospel of Mark is more on the activities of Jesus than on his teachings. Mark presented the gospel as relevant even in the midst of uncertainties and crises, and he presented Jesus as present and active among his people. From our reading today, I am certain that you'll see things that I don't see, but allow me to highlight what stood out to me when I reflected on the text, centered around the key question Jesus asks: what do you want me to do for you? I've been taught that it's important to pay attention to what happens before and what happens after when studying a particular passage in Scripture to better understand its context. So let's take a brief look at both. First, what happened before? Just prior to reading about the bold request of James and John, Jesus had taken his disciples aside to tell them what was going to happen to him, predicting his death for the third time. He says to his disciples in verse 33, "We are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles, who will mock him and spit on him, flog him and kill him. 3 days later, he will rise." Jesus describes to his closest followers, his friends, the ones he loves, what he must endure on the cross, his path of suffering and sacrifice. And it's then our text starts with verse 35, with these two brothers, James and John, pulling away from the others and choosing this somber moment to tell Jesus to do whatever they ask of him. Clearly, they hadn't heard Jesus. They didn't understand what he was telling them, that the kingdom and its glory would come only through sacrificial love. But Jesus engages with them anyway. And it's here we read and attempt to visualize Jesus asking them the piercing question, "What do you want me to do for you?" Now, before going any further, let's take a brief look at what happened after. So following the request of James and John, they arrive in the city of Jericho and come across Bartimaeus, a blind man sitting by the roadside begging. Bartimaeus hears of Jesus passing through, whom he only knows through reputation, and he makes a huge scene, trying desperately to get his attention. Jesus stops in his tracks and calls Bartimaeus to him and proceeds to ask him the same profound question: "What do you want me to do for you?" In comparing and contrasting the exchange of these brothers, James and John, with Bartimaeus, the blind beggar, in answer to Jesus' same question, thoughts began to form that I'd like to spend the rest of our time reflecting on together. First, our approach to Jesus reveals much about how we view him. We see the brothers in verse 35 saying, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask." James and John approach Jesus rather casually, as both teacher and maybe an all too familiar friend. Their approach suggests a lack of awareness and understanding of the power and purpose of Jesus and their place in his redemptive plan. It reminds me of what happened in the Garden of Eden, or even the Tower of Babel, where man's desire to become like God, shoulder to shoulder, not being content with simply being his creatures, worshiping him. Bartimaeus, we see, though, in verse 47, when he heard that it was Jesus, he begins to shout, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me," and then shouts all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Bartimaeus knew exactly who Jesus was and the power he carried, and he positioned himself accordingly as one who was desperate and in need of him. Like a lost sheep following the shepherd, Bartimaeus looks to Jesus, knowing that he alone can meet his needs. What does our approach to Jesus reveal about how we view him? Do we too approach Jesus like Aladdin's genie in a bottle, as if God is somehow our servant, subservient to us and accomplishing our own wishes for comfort, position, or glory? Or do we come to Jesus like Bartimaeus, hungry for his touch, his mercy, redemption, and healing in all the ways that we need healing? Second, our response to Jesus reveals our focus and priority. Jesus asks, "What do you want me to do for you?" And we see the brothers in verse 37 answer, "Let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory." Their focus is on future glory. The disciples want what is seemingly so presumptuous, their arrogance on full display, somehow bypassing the suffering that Jesus just spoke about for a future glory and a distorted kingdom reality. Bartimaeus, we see in verse 51, says, "Rabbi, I want to see." Bartimaeus' priority is his immediate need. He is so simple in his request, and he has the faith to believe Jesus can do it. How would you respond to Jesus' question of you right now? What do you want me to do for you? What does our response to his question reveal about our focus and priority? Do we find ourselves grasping for power and authority and self-recognition? Or is our focus sincerely to see Jesus and encounter him in his mercy? Finally, our faith, sacrifice, and servanthood are what's most important to Jesus. Jesus responds to the brothers in verse 38. "You don't know what you're asking." And then to all his disciples, he says, "Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many." To Bartimaeus, Jesus responds in verse 52, "Go," he says, "your faith has healed you." And here we come to the crux of the whole story, the Jesus way, the posture we take in this life. It's not about upward mobile paths to position and power. It's just the opposite. It's the downward journey that sees us along with him, laying down our lives for the world. And what we see in Bartimaeus is that in the midst of this downward path, the truest thing we bring is our whole selves, broken as we are, calling in faith that the mercy that Jesus is bringing to the world, he would bring to us as well. Because the truth is, in one way or another, aren't we all like Bartimaeus, in need of healing, needing to see? Isn't this our primary posture on the Jesus way? Friends, living out our Christian faith is not easy. It's neither glorious nor comfortable. Just as the disciples didn't recognize the cup that they were asking for and the suffering and persecution to follow, we too have selective hearing and can have a misguided, limited perspective in our journey of faith. The good news is that Jesus knows our innermost desires and needs even before we recognize them ourselves. And he gives us his Spirit, the wonderful counselor, to teach and to guide us every step of the way. The Son of Man gave his life not to be served, but to serve. Follow me is his invitation for us, and always has been from the very beginning. And as with Bartimaeus, may the Lord have mercy on us along the way. Blessings on you in the week to come.